What's up, everybody? The Red Dragon here, and today we are discussing something a little off the beaten path. You know, on my channel, I've always said it's a variety show because I do all sorts of stuff, really whatever comes to mind. You know, if I read something that's really cool in the news, I'll deliver it, or if I think of something that I think would be funny, I'll post it up. So I've done comedies, reviews, tutorials, you name it. But definitely the thing that I love doing most is delivering a video that gives you some sort of information. Like, there's nothing more rewarding than to read a comment where somebody says, thanks, that's exactly what I needed to know, or that's what was stopping me from passing this level or something. Passing information on, I think, is just, I think it's one of the most basic human elements, and it's very rewarding for me to pass on information that somebody can take and say, you know what, I didn't know that before, and it was valuable. So I try to do that with all my videos, and it usually has to deal with the virtual world, but occasionally I like to venture over and talk about stuff a little bit more true to the real world, you know, and it's not inside a video game. So this subject that I wanted to talk about was something that I found really enlightening, and it helped me, I think, find myself a little bit faster, and hopefully you'll find it entertaining or interesting as well. And especially if you're younger and maybe you think that you're a little weird or different, hopefully this is definitely for you. So I want to talk about personalities. Everybody has one, everybody's unique, everybody's different, but really you can really compile people into two big groups. You've got introverts and you've got extroverts, and these are just different types of people, different ways of thinking, different personalities. Everybody, you know, has some of these qualities. Now, the way I found out about this was I was reading a Facebook page, and one of my friends posted that they were an introvert. And when I first read this, I had never heard of this word before. Like, this was totally new for me. And this was like a couple of years ago. And I'm like, what's wrong with my friend? You know? And so they had a link there, and I click on it to see what type of disease they got or something. And I'm reading it, and it's a quiz. And so it's like, if you answer all these questions and you answer them true, then you're an introvert. And if you answer them false, then you're an extrovert. And I went through there, and one by one, I was like, true, true, true. And I got to the end of it, and I had answered all the questions true. And I found out that day that I was an introvert. Now, this was eye-opening to me because I had kind of grown up thinking that, well, I probably think very differently than the majority of the population, you know, and I think a lot of kids do that. You know, you always think that you're alone, or a lot of people do anyway, and that you're figuring this stuff out, and that nobody really understands, or you don't understand why you act or think and do the things that you do the way you do them. So, and that's part of the growing experience and learning. But if you don't understand this and you can't figure it out, sometimes that can lead to depression and all sorts of things. So let's talk about what an introvert and extrovert is, because we need to figure out why we do the things we do, or why we act the way we do. And that's why I really love watching shows that are informative, like on the brain and psychology and all this sorts of stuff. So I like watching the Science Channel and all that stuff that a lot of people find boring. But I like to pick out the interesting things and pass them along to you. So let's get into what is an extrovert and what is an introvert. An extrovert is a person who is energized by being around other people. They actually get bored really easily if they're alone or with a small group. They would rather talk to someone rather than sit alone. And they actually think while they're speaking. So if you got somebody who just talks all the time and there's nonstop talking, a lot of times they you know, you ask them a question, they'll just start immediately. So that's just the way their brain works. They actually think better while they're speaking. Introverts, on the other hand, which is what I am, is almost the complete opposite. Like, when we get into a crowd of people, or there's a lot of stimulus stuff going on, like you're in a crowded area, or you're at a party or a club or something, it is really draining. Like, I literally feel like I've ran a marathon sometimes just by going to the mall and being around several other people. Like, that just totally wipes me out. And I used to not be all like that. Like, I've actually found that as I've grown older, I've actually become more introverted. But anyway, let's continue. An introverted person likes to hang out by themselves a lot of times, or with a really small crowd. Sometimes, just one or two people in a conversation. They don't like to have big group activities. They don't like to go out partying. They don't like to do all these things with lots of, the only word I can think of is stimulus around. So, you go to a rave club, there's all kinds of lights and noise and people and everything. That's what I'm calling stimulus. So, introverts, not a good place to be whenever you're an introvert. So people that are introverted like quiet time. They like to hang out by themselves. They like to be entertained by their own thoughts, by their own emotions. They like to figure stuff out. And they daydream a lot. And they tend to have, I guess, fewer friends, but those friendships are much more meaningful and powerful. You've probably met some people who everybody they meet's their new BFF, and so they can go hang out and talk to them like they've known them 1,000 years. And introverted people aren't like that. Like, I can count on one hand my best friends, and in fact, I don't even need all 5 fingers. And these best friends have been with me since I was a kid. And, they'll always be my best friends. Like, I just know that, And we don't even have to talk all the time. We don't have to go hang out. And sometimes we'll go weeks or months, sometimes even years without talking. But when we do get back together, it's like we never stopped, But it's not like that with everybody we meet. Like, we find relationships and we try to build on them. And everything is, I guess, much more deeper on just about every level. Like, we like to really think stuff through. I talked about extroverts like to think while they're speaking. Introverts, on the other hand, are really deep thinkers. Like, we have to really figure stuff out in our head before we say it, or before we figure out what it is that we're thinking. Like, we want to dwell on it. We want to take all the different parts of it and piece it together and try to figure it out. And so, if you are an introvert, you might go through life thinking that you're totally weird and totally abnormal because you're not going out and you don't have any desire whatsoever to go party, or you don't want to go hang out with that big crowd, or you don't want to go leave the house every weekend to go shopping. I can sit at the house and be completely happy. That's me. And it's, I used to think that it was abnormal. And then after I found out this, and I found out that there's a whole group of people out there just like me, it was really relieving, because I realized I wasn't abnormal. I wasn't weird. There's a lot of people out there like me. But the majority of the population, they are extroverts. In fact, extroverts make up 60 to 80% of the population, whereas introverts only make up 25 to 40% of the population. But even though we're in the minority, you might find it interesting, if you're an introvert, to learn that 60% of gifted people who are really talented, really smart, they're introverts. So even though we're the minority in the population, we actually make up the majority of the talented people. Now, I said we, like I'm throwing myself in there, but I don't want to do that. I'm not saying I'm gifted by any means whatsoever. But hopefully I got some gifted people out there watching right now. And you can take that and you can, hopefully look into it. And it was something that I really wanted to read more about. And I took the quiz and I read a little bit more and found out all this stuff, which to me was really eye-opening. It was a relief, like I said. And once you realize that, we always tend to focus on our differences with everyone. And we focus on what sets us apart from everyone. But if you really look at it, we have a lot more in common than we like to think. And when you realize that you're not completely weird, you're not crazy, you're not abnormal, then you can begin to appreciate yourself and appreciate the way that you think and the way that you react and do things, and you become yourself. And that's part of growing up. That's part of maturing. Well, already we are at the 10-minute marker, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this one off. But if you think you are an introvert or an extrovert, post in the comment section below. I want to know how many introverts and extroverts I got. I'm kind of thinking that I've picked up a few introverts along the way, so that would be interesting to know. But if you would like to hear more about this, if like this subject is really interesting to you, there's more things that I would actually like to do on this subject that I may do. We may actually even take the quiz. Maybe I'll get on here and ask some questions and you can answer them, and we'll figure it out on your own if you're not really sure. But if you do think you fit into one of these two categories, of course there's, whoa, I don't know if you heard that or not, but that, got a bad storm coming in, so I better get off here soon. But anyway, if you haven't, well, what was I going to say? All right. There's people on both sides of the spectrum. You've got people who are really on the introverted side and people who are on the extroverted side at the end of the spectrum. And then you've got people in between who kind of go both ways. So we can take the quiz. I think that would be interesting. And then there's also a lot of myths that I would like to pick out there, and also talk about some things that are kind of setbacks as introverts, because it's not all easy once you find out you're an introvert. But it is a little bit easier, and you can kind of draw on that energy. So if this is a subject that you would like to hear more about, then please let me know. And that does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.